Hi, I'm Nick McAllister. I'm autistic and I'm the Disability Affairs reporter with ABC Perth. I'm also a blogger, lover of books, movies, podcasts, cheese, Italy, naps, and hot chips.
Mate, you're my man. I love this.
That's the intro we demand for all future guests.
If you are coming on ListenABLE, that's what we need, something as good as that.
Yeah.
But it's about time we got a legitimate journalist on this show. We had Naz Campanella. She's a legit journalist. And now we've got you,
Good
Nick.
call.
So we moonlight as journalists pretty much, and we have no idea what we're doing. So to have a proper employed state affairs reporter is unbelievable, mate. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Can I just say I have to say this because I did on International Day on International Day of People with Disability. I did a morning tea thing. So all the other people with disabilities in different parts of the ABC around the different states, we all got together and had a little tea meeting over a Zoom. And they said to me, how do you describe yourself? I said, well, trailblazer is the first word that comes to mind. and they said, why do you call yourself a trailblazer? I said, because since ABC Perth opened in Perth, I am the one and only person with a disability they have employed there.
Oh, wow.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, do you think?
It's a good thing. It's a good thing because then I set a standard. And then, you know, if I go off to News Breakfast with Michael Rowland, then the next person that comes in has got a high standard, a high bar to come in. And they go, oh, my God, how are we going to do it?
You won't be hosting with Michael Rowland because ABC is all about diversity. He'll get the flick for you, right? You can't.
He will. They're gonna kick Lisa off, give her back roads.
No.
Get me in. Me and Michael have a bit of innuendo banter. Then we go to serious news story, and then I see Tony Armstrong.
No, we're dropping Tony.
You doing Tony? No, Tony. No, sorry, Tony's too hot. We need him on the TV. He's a hot Aboriginal man. We need him on the TV. We need to see some eye candy in the morning. Hello.
True. But that's you.
You can't look at Michael Rowland and go, "Oh, it's just him." He needs Tony. You know.
I'm mates with Tony. Angus knows Tony. His head's getting too big, mate. We've got to pull him down a couple of notches,
but
right?
Look, but how hot is he though? How hot is he though? Come on.
Hot and talented. All right.
Do you guys watch The Weekly?
Yep. When he does those videos
with Charlie Pickering.
Yeah, because Tony was on there a week or so ago doing like reading bad news but in a sexy way, and he did a Baywatch thing, and I was like, well, that's just it.
I think if you get a job there, we're gonna have to watch you out for HR. By the sounds of it.
I mean, listen, I can be professional. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's good. Nick, yes. I've got so many questions for you because the information that you gave us is so pertinent. Because can we start off with your disability?
Yes.
You're autistic,
yes,
but you found out later on in life about your disability.
I did, and this is not uncommon because there's a scale of autism. So if you're on the severe end, you tend to get more noticed as you're a child. But because I am classed as high functioning, I do a thing, and women do it as well, and that's why there's not really a way for them to diagnose. So that's why so many women in their 40s or 50s or older don't get diagnosed, and that's why I didn't, because we learned a thing called camouflaging. So if we were at school together, you, me, and Dylan, I would look how you two would behave, and then I would mimic those behaviours. And then I would fit in, and then I wouldn't stand out, as it were. And then no one would know. So I got to about 40, and then I went and saw my doctor, and he basically said to me, it isn't anything. You're too old. They're not going to diagnose you with anything. And I said, well, let me go. You know, it's not going to cost anyone anything. It's just my time wasted if there's nothing there. I came back. And he said, no, you were right. And I said, well, thank you. I thought I was. I said, but, you know, don't dismiss me. But he did. But then he ate his words.
I have no idea how you get diagnosed with autism. What is the process of finding out that you're autistic?
So I went to see a clinical psychologist, and they basically, there's questions you answer. And then they diagnose you based on that, and it's a DM5. diagnoses that they have to abide by, and then they see where you are. So on the autism spectrum, I'm level 2. So I'm not on the severe end. I'm not on the level 1. I need help, but I don't need as much help as someone who's severely autistic and someone who can get on and doesn't need any support or anything. So yeah, but it was a shock, but then it was, I think it had always been there. It was just dormant, as it were. And then, when I found out, it was a shock. I wasn't jumping and, excited or anything. I was, it's taken me a long while to get to here to accept it. Because, it's not physically visible that I have a disability. You don't look at me and think, oh, he's autistic, because you don't know. But, there's days where I don't accept it, and there's days where I go, well, what can I do about it? I can't rid myself of it, and I wouldn't want to. But then, I can't do anything about it. I just have to go through each day as it comes and just go, okay, what have I learned today? What behaviors didn't go down too well? What did I say it was inappropriate? How can I learn from that? And then the next day, not make the same mistakes, or just get an idea of how that fits into work and then family.
Do you know why it's always good to interview a journalist? Because they give the best answers. Makes our job so much easier. You just touched on about 5 talking points, to be honest, and we'll get through them all. But I want to talk about growing, as you said, growing up and into your, being a young man. Did you know in your gut, was there moments where you're like, what just happened? Why did I do that? Or like, how much of that was actually playing in your mind? Or were you genuinely like completely shocked when you found out?
I was shocked, but then when I look back on it, there was, I remember we got someone to come around to cut my hair once when I was a bit younger, and I literally screamed the house down. Honestly, the neighbours must have thought that someone was getting murdered, like someone was stabbing with scissors. And at that, you just think at that point, oh, Mum thought it was just a tantrum. But if you analyse it now, that was a meltdown. But no, I wasn't aware of that, and certainly, in the sort of the late 80s, early 90s, there wasn't really much information about autism around. So Mum put it down to, oh, he doesn't like getting his hair cut. Well, no, because I was autistic, and because I didn't enjoy that experience. But yeah, no, it was a shock. But look, when you start to look back and you relive certain points of your life, you just go, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Oh yeah, no, okay, I can see it now. But yeah.
Well, you use the term camouflaging. Is that a term or an experience that you now, as a later person diagnosed with autism, that you recognise? Did you think at the time that when you were mimicking other people's behaviours, that's how society worked? Like everybody was mimicking each other? You didn't realise what you're doing, the behaviours were different?
I had no idea. I would just look at people around me and go, okay, well, he's acting like this, she's acting like that. Okay, I'm just going to go with it because that's what I knew to do. But as you just said, when you look back on it and you reevaluate, you go, oh, actually, that's what I was doing. I wasn't being me. I was being a version of say you, Angus, or you, Dylan. I was doing what you were doing. So I was trying to be you, but as me, because I thought, well, that's what you do. But no one had told me. No one prepares you to how to act socially, how to integrate with people. They don't teach you this. You've just got to learn it. So I thought, well, I'll look at what these two are doing, and then I'll just do it the same. And then I'll just, walk through life and just do that.
I'm glad you didn't mimic me at school, because you would have ate a whole bag of Doritos a day and had no eyebrows. Which,
if you're on social media, I am going to insert a photo of Dylan as a child here.
Enjoy that, because I think you made a good choice not doing that. What about that journey that when you found out? So you were obviously a bit later on in life, and I could see you even struggling to answer that before, about some days accepting it, some days not. I could just see it on your face and even in your voice. obviously, mate, you can be as vulnerable as you want here, and that's why this podcast is cool, because people can own their story and talk about it. Where do you feel like you sit, not only with yourself, but within the disability community?
So the only way I could describe it is it's like getting a slap round the face, because I wasn't prepared for it, and then once my doctor told me, I was like, okay, what do I do now? And he didn't have any answers, because he dismissed me, and obviously he had a very ableist attitude at that point, and I didn't realize that. I didn't know what the word ableist was. I had no idea. But yeah, it doesn't sit comfortable with me some days, and it didn't then. And it's taken me. I'm 6 years in to being autistic, and I still to some days think, really, have I? Are you sure? You 100%. No, there's some days I do better with it, and some days I don't. I just think, well, okay, this is what I've got. I don't not want to be autistic, but then again, I wouldn't have particularly chosen it, because it is a daily struggle, especially when I have conversations with people, because the only way I can describe it is it's like being at a UN convention and you've got someone translating for you. So when I talk to you two, I listen to what you've asked me, and then I give you a response. But in my head, I'm trying to translate it so that it comes across in a way that isn't gonna be offensive, because I could just say anything, and then you just go, "Did he just say what?" Do you know what I mean? And so that's
sorry to interrupt. Are you talking about like the cues and the sarcasm and the delivery as opposed to the words?
Yeah. And then because I have to look at people's faces for social cues. So when they're talking to me, I have to think, okay, what did they actually ask me? Because obviously I've got an instant answer, but then I've got to rework it because I don't want to offend you. So then I've got to try and think of I've got to rework that answer back to you so that you don't get offended. So that's why I look at people's eyes and facial expressions, because I need to know what are they asking me? How am I good? What have I said back? Does it? Okay, no, that was good. That was good. That was great. But it's a constant thing, because like when I'm at work, I get to my computer, I sit down, start answering emails, and then people might come by and start talking to me, and I'm thinking, oh God, what are they going to say? How am I going to respond? What are they going to ask me? Are they going to want a quick chit chat? How am I going to receive what they're saying? So it's a constant battle. I wouldn't wish being autistic on anybody. I have to say that, but it makes up who I am. So then, that's why I started the blog, because I just thought, well, if people can get an insight, even if it's a tiny insight into what my life's like, then it could be beneficial to them.
Sorry, why would you not wish being autistic on anyone?
Because it's not fundamentally something that is something that because I just wouldn't, to be honest. It's not a pleasurable disability. Not that disability is pleasurable, but you know what I mean. It's not. It's just a constant. I'm constantly fatigued by having it. So I have to take a nap in the afternoons. I can only work for so many hours, because there's the once fatigue kicks in. Then if I don't deal with that, then there's a potential meltdown coming. I don't need that. I don't need my day to be to the point where I'm having a meltdown, and then I'm having to find somewhere to go, maybe I go to my sensory box, maybe I go to a sensory corner, maybe if I'm at work, there's a room I can go in just to to calm myself down. So yeah, no, I wouldn't particularly be shooting anybody, but then I think some days I think, no, well, you have it, so celebrate it. But then there's other days I don't. It's just an up and down thing. One day I'll accept it probably, but I don't know when that will be.
I thank you so much for talking us through that processing of conversation, because I'm on record as saying Prue Stevenson, episode 4, one of my favorite episodes that we've done, and she's an autistic person, and she just taught me so much life lessons that I now go through, and I love spending time with her in person as well. But she talked about meltdowns and being overwhelmed, etc. And I think now I better understand from your explanation of how that can happen a little bit more, because for her there's triggers, physical, emotional, verbal cues, all of this stuff that triggers, but I didn't understand the processing. So thanks so much for that.
And also, sorry, just to add to that, Angus, thanks for being honest about how you feel about disability, because we get a lot of people like me who, people say it's not glamorous and they don't like it, and I'm like the opposite, because my mindset that I've got to it, but that's just me, right? So we can't all be like that. And I remember I said at my Australian of the Year speech that, I love my life, I love my disability, and I want more people to feel the way that I do. But a lot of people are like, well, I'm never going to feel that way. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. That's up to you. You know what I mean? But I can only talk from my experience. But to hear the other side of it is powerful, Nick. So just want to say a big shout out and thanks for doing that.
Thank you. And just on the meltdown thing, I actually, I felt so ashamed, but there was a point at work where I was about to have a meltdown, and I literally somehow prevented myself from having it because I felt embarrassed and I felt ashamed that I was about to have one, and I didn't do it, and I should have done it. And I kick myself every day that I should have just been able to do whatever it was I needed to do in that moment, and I didn't. And I just want to get that in because it still affects me to this day, where I just think, why didn't I just do it? It's part of the autism, it's part of the disability, but I felt so ashamed and I felt so embarrassed, and I just was worried about people's reactions, and I should have just gone, fudge you all, I'm just going to do it. I don't give a fudge, because basically this is what was happening, but I suppressed it, and I just feel really ashamed about that experience, to be honest.
Yeah, your worth is in what other people think in that moment, and I've always had that too, but your worth is in yourself and the people that love you, not if you have one meltdown. And I think, if an employer or someone with a disability sacks someone because of that, well, then fudge them, as you put it. You know what I mean? It's not about that.
Well, exactly. I just didn't know what people's reactions were going to be, and then I managed to suppress it, but I wish I hadn't.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You did mention at the start of this conversation, Nick, about the autism spectrum, low and high functioning, how you sit on 2 out of the 5, etc. Can we talk about because I know from reading and chatting to Prue as well that it's a hot topic in the autistic community about whether it's fair to say that you're high functioning or low functioning, and whether that therefore puts a bias on somebody's way of treating that person or how they should be expected to go and have a communication with that person. How do you feel about the scale of autism that exists out there?
I mean, obviously it would be nice if there wasn't a scale, but then if you don't have the scale, then you're not going to be essentially more acutely aware of, the severity of that particular disability. But I just remember when I started work at the ABC, I literally had a conversation with them, and I said, okay, this is the level of autism I have, and these are my needs and these are my wants. How can you come and meet me in the middle so that you can provide me with those? And so then you're more aware. But we have continual conversations at work. We're all open and honest, and I just say, look, these are my triggers. These are things that could potentially I could have a meltdown with. I could be overwhelmed. There could be a sensory overwhelm. Is there some place I can go if I need to, and I don't need to tell you why? You just know if you see me walking away from my desk, I'm heading to that particular room, and they've done that. They've just been really accommodating. But I think personally, it would be nice if we remove that stigma of where are you on the autism spectrum? Well, none of your fashion business, to be honest. Because I've been asked that, and I'm like, well, does it concern you? No. Someone asked me that, and I said, well, where do you sit on being a nosy Parker? What it doesn't make
pretty high on the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any difference to you where I sit, or And I just think if you need to know, I'll tell you, but you don't need to know. So I mean, it would be nice if we could, if there wasn't that. But then, on the other hand, I think, well, if there wasn't the different levels, then it would be more than leading into a conversation of, okay, well, I'm this autistic, or I'm, whatever the disability is. So I think that there could be some reform around that, but I think you've got to look at okay, then how would you reword it and phrase it so that you weren't in that, situation of going, well, I'm here and this, but yeah, I know they want to change the wording on high functioning, but I don't know what they'll change it to, just autistic. But then there's different levels. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be kept on going.
I've got a yes/no answer for you, and then a longer question on the same topic. Do you think it's important to tell your employer where you are on the spectrum of autism if you're going for a job?
No, not until you actually are in the place of employment, because they could discriminate and say, well, okay, we're not going to employ you. But with the ABC, it wasn't an issue for them, to be honest. They just need you to know, from my perspective, what my needs and wants were, and then they went from there.
See, journalist, 120-word answer for a yes/no. Love it. You can come on anytime. All right, perfect.
Very true. My bigger question to that is that employment is a big part of your email to us to come onto this podcast, because you did struggle with finding employment. Can you take us through how many applications, or where you tried to, not specifically, but what work you were looking for, and your journey into finding your current role?
So I think for a while I was just literally doing anything for work. At one point I wasn't really considering where my career was going in some respects. So I've done retail for a number of years, and then when I emigrated over here from England, I worked in the cinema, which I should never have gone into it. I mean, it was, hospitality was a very toxic industry, and I didn't enjoy it. And I'm glad I left in the end. I actually had a breakdown, and I left, and I was, but it was my sort of Tina Turner moment. I left with my dignity. I had pride, and I left on my own terms. I'd always been in the...
Sorry, Nick, to interrupt. See, this is why it'd be so hard to be undiagnosed with something, right? You're doing hospitality, which is just stimulation overload. People yelling at you, loud noises, lots going on. And you're going there, there's just no understanding, because you didn't even know yourself at this point. That would be hard, man. You know what I mean? Like, I feel for you in that sense, because you're like, not only why am I acting like this, but why are these people doing this to me? There's no balance there. So yeah, it would have been a tough for a little while. I mean, that's the best thing about being in a wheelchair. Could never do hospitality. Stuff that. Can't carry plates. I would be brutal at it as well.
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible, because especially where we were on the Gold Coast, it was, I didn't enjoy it. But I'd always been...
the Gold Coast. Just because you're from Perth doesn't mean you can throw our Gold Coast listeners under the bus. Right?
Excuse me. It was in Southport. I think you can agree. Southport is not the best suburb in the Gold Coast. I'm sorry, but it really isn't.
Shout out to our Southport listeners.
Sorry, Southport, but it wasn't. But anyway, so then I'd always been into creative writing. I just didn't know where to go and what to do. And then when I came to Perth, I started to do some blogging for Spectrum Space, and I then got contacted by another disability organisation wanting me to do some blogging for them, but it was more interviews about their key personnel. So I did that. But the CEO at the time, I was talking to him, John, and I said, listen, I really want to work for the ABC. I really want to get to journalism, and we just had a conversation, and I thought nothing of it. Left, did the thing, the post went out, and then a few weeks later, a guy called Robert, who is his friend, works at the ABC, contacted me and said, my boss, Andrew O'Connor, wants to see you. So I went in for a meeting. And I was taken on as freelance initially, did 2 articles. They did very well. Was meant to do 4, but then I don't know if you've heard of COVID. It happened. There were some lockdowns, I think, in certain states. I'm not really sure. We didn't get affected over here in Perth. Sorry about that.
You guys got detached from the whole of Australia.
We did. But obviously we're paying for it now, because with our COVID numbers recently. True. So, we were going that for a while, but then obviously, and then we've suffered now. But anyway.
Couple of gestures to the camera.
So then I got called back in, and they wanted to retain me for a year to write more articles. They gave me a fancy title, Disability Affairs reporter, and then I'm now doing I do 2 days a week, but it's an 8-hour shift split over 2 days. So I do 4 days Tuesday, 4 days Thursday, and that works for me at the moment. And I can't sing their praises enough. They've been highly supportive. They really have. And I'm enjoying it, and I'm getting to learn about other disabilities, because I think that's something that maybe I was a bit ignorant over, because I thought, oh, how is everyone else doing with their disability? And then when you start to talk to those people and find out their stories, you go, oh, okay, they do have it maybe as tough as I have it, or even tougher. So it's always it's a good perspective for me, and it keeps me grounded.
Shout out, this is not ABC ad this episode, but shout out to them. They're the only major media outlet with a disability reporter, like a disability affairs reporter, like yourself and Naz. Like they really care about it. Where do you find your content? How do you find these stories? Do people come to you? What's the best way for even people listening now that want to have a story to share outside of coming on our podcast? We're in demand. Where do you find them?
It's mainly Googling. I do a lot of Googling. I jot down ideas that I have in my head, and then I see if they are workable ideas. Sometimes someone might have appeared on a different show on a different network, and I think, oh, there's an interesting story there. I'll contact them and see if they're interested. But obviously, we've got to go then come in at a different angle, because depends on what show they've been on and what they've talked about. So yeah, but mainly it's a lot of deep dive searching and researching, and just looking and trying to find interesting stories that haven't been told before. The one I was most proud of for a while was there's a drag queen in Sydney called Disability. Great name. Great name. She's blonde and she's blind and she's deaf, and she does drag in Sydney. Hello, what more do you want, everyone?
Perfect. A question from a question leading once again from Prue, which is the example that I'll always use because she was my first ever guest with autism. She spoke about stimulation overload and triggers. The great example that I'll never forget is that she says when she goes to an airport, she'll walk in, have a look through the door of a bathroom, see if there's a Dyson hand dryer, and if there is, she'll walk out because that high pitched sound doesn't work well for her. Can you relate to, not necessarily that specifically, but is there something that triggers you and your autistic self?
Yes. I mean, obviously, busy cafes, busy supermarkets, sirens, in the airport, that annoying buggy that goes round that makes woo, woo, woo sound, and you think, no, we got it. We understand it. Don't draw attention to the fact that some elderly person, someone with disabilities on the back of a golf cart, Yeah, no, I mean, I'll only go to certain places if I'm, if I'm invited out to, say, someone's leaving party or a birthday party or a Christmas party. I'll assess where it's going, and if I think it's going to be too much, I'll just make an excuse and not go. But yeah, they failed to tell me at work one day they were doing a fire alarm test. And it was the one that goes, this is a fire alarm. And I was like, are you fudging kidding me? I was trying to then find my noise cancelling headphones, which were just completely worthless. And I should have just burnt them in a fire because they did nothing. And then I had to run out of the office and then downstairs and outside, because all in my head was, this is what, and I was like, I know, I heard you the first time, but because it's on a loop for so long, I was like, oh, you're fucking kidding me. So I just had to go outside, and someone came out eventually and found me and said, you're right. I was like, yeah, but you could have warned me. Like, you could have said to me, hey, listen, maybe you want to go and get a coffee for 10 minutes because we're going to have this on or something. But yeah, no, that wasn't helpful.
I was just going to say, do you know there's going to be an employer with an autistic employee who listens to this and just goes, Nick has just saved me that example, and the person who works for them is also going to just feel so included because, you know, we're all learning from people's mistakes, and you'll never know, Nick, unless someone reaches out directly to you that, you know, that small story you shared, which is, you know, obviously humorous the way you delivered it as well physically, but you know, that's really going to help someone. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Fire alarms are important, and we aren't fully discarding them, because otherwise, it's funny. Like, even fire alarms for all disabilities, they're like, to me, if I'm on the first floor, here's another one for wheelchairs. Oh, can you just don't use the elevator? Just wait in the stairwell. We'll come get you. It's like,
yeah. We've spoken about that on previous episodes, but it still rocks me that there's no solution. When there is a fire and you're at the 15th floor of a building, the first thing they do, shut down the elevators.
Person out, and the last person they come get is the person in a wheelchair, because they reckon getting 99 able-bodied people out is better than 10 able-bodied people helping the wheelchair. Because my best mate Tim, he won't mind this, he was doing a course, Nick, and he said, what happens if there's someone in a wheelchair on the 10th floor? He goes, well, you grab people and you help them. And he goes, no, you leave them there, and then you come back at the very, very end. And I was like, and Tim failed that question because he's like, absolutely not, that's not happening. So there you go. Anyway, welcome to Listen Fire Alarms. Is that new podcast?
All right, it is time for our Bowl of Uncomfortable. Nick, you listen to the podcast, so you know what this is, but our community has sent questions in private, or some of them are made public, but these two in particular are private. And to be honest, once again, sometimes I can easily riff off the question. There is one here that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but once again, it's not from me. I'm just the mouthpiece. Here we go. This is the one that makes me feel uncomfortable, which is the purpose of this. And if you don't want to answer, of course you don't have to. I work in a small office with someone who is autistic, and they are incredibly disruptive to the workplace. I've tried numerous times to approach them to begin a normal dialogue and have been met with hostility and made to feel uncomfortable. The easy answer is to say it's that we, the employers, are the problem, but everyone has had similar experiences. I would not hire someone with autism because of my lived experience. Am I wrong for feeling this way? And is there any tips as to other ways to help the situation?
Well, yes, you are wrong, because A, you're discriminating against them, and B, have you not actually sat down with them and had a conversation and said, you know, what can we do to begin working on a solution? You know, I mean, I don't know that the autistic person, obviously, in this case, but they sound like they're sort of, it sounds like they're having a bit of a sensory overload, being in that office. And also, maybe they're on the higher end of the autism scale. I wonder if, you know, they've got a support worker with them, or they can bring someone in. They can all have a conversation together and find out, you know, the best way to move forward. Because no, you shouldn't discriminate against someone, and you shouldn't, you know, I don't think they're being hostile. The autistic person isn't being hostile. I think they're just reacting to the environment around them. And, you know, that person that isn't autistic is going, well, you're hostile. Well, you don't know that. Have you talked to them? Have you had a conversation? Find out, because, you know, it could be something that's easily, you know, you can easily work on and come to a solution to.
Yeah, I think adding to that as well, Nick, to say that you once tried something and it didn't work is BS, in my opinion, Angus. And also, you can't always ask the person with disability to be able to advocate for themselves about what they need. But there are plenty of resources like autism training out there, you know, education. I've got a consulting firm, GSA, where we do stuff about all kinds of disabilities, for example, where if that company invests in their people and educates everyone will understand what needs to happen. You know what I mean? And it can be a pretty daunting experience, not just for the people working there, but also the person with disability. And it's an investment, because good business, because people with disability make great employees.
We do, 100%. Yeah.
That's why you and I are the best.
I've got another as well. I've got a new bowl of uncomfortable. Another bowl of uncomfortable. I use humor in every. Oh, Matt. This guy's name's Matt. It was in the DMs that he didn't say he didn't want to be confidential. So thanks for your message, Matt, and thanks for listening. I use humor in everyday life to help break the ice when starting conversations with new people, whether it be at work, dating, partners, friends, or on public transport. The only time I don't make a joke to break the ice is when I see someone with disability. Am I being ableist, and how do you feel about a situational icebreaker? Now, he's put an example here. Let me show you what he thinks. He said, an example. I might make a comment about someone's taste in music based off their band merch and, you know, do some, you know, self-deprecating humor. Or I pretend I understand what the Asian character tattoo is on their arm, like I speak it fluently. Those are his two examples, but he feels uncomfortable doing it with disability.
I feel uncomfortable being around Matt. To be honest, no. Look, I think, and I think Prue said this in the podcast, but sometimes I'm one of them. Sometimes we may not understand the humor or the joke behind what you're saying. So maybe don't start with humor, but maybe just have a general conversation, because, a lot of times we might misinterpret what you're saying, because you can make a joke and I might not get it, and I'm happy to stand there and either I do the thing where I go, or I just go, sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying. Can you explain it to me? So I maybe wouldn't use humor, or just have a general conversation. But humor is a difficult one, because obviously it comes back to social cues and picking up on, what people are saying. And some autistic people don't pick up on that. And, I've had someone said to me once, oh, this person really gets under my skin. And I said, oh, you can see the doctor about that. And they said, no, that means I'm in love with them or something. And I said, oh, does it? It sounds like a rash. You know what I mean? But because I didn't know, and then they're looking at me like I'm, an idiot. And I'm like, well, no, that's how I interpret it. So don't just assume that I'm going to get what you're saying humorous wise, So maybe don't start with humor. Maybe start with a general conversation.
Build relationship, and do it in a tactful way. I had a guy at the airport the other day really wanted a photo. I could just see he's had his phone and he goes, "G'day, mate. I got dirty shoes. Thought you couldn't walk." That was his opening line. And I was just like, I was like, "G'day, mate. How are you?" "Yeah, I'm Dylan. Nice to meet you." "Well, can I get a photo?" "Yeah, no worries, bro." Like, honestly, I was like, shocking. Lucky I
would have said to him, the shoes are only dirty because I shoved them up your ass.
All right. Well, Nick McAllister, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. If you do want to follow the blog, it is autisticnick.com. Thank you very much, Nick. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me on, everyone.